When black people wake up and become intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, as other humans are intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, then the black man will think like a black man, and he will feel for other black people. And it is the only thing that will bring an end to it. No federal court, state court, or city court will bring an end to it. It's something that the black man has to bring an end to himself.
In this video, I will be discussing a book that I recently read. This book is called Black Power, Radical Politics and African American Identity by Jeffrey O.G. Ogbar. This book primarily discusses the struggles African Americans faced during the 1960s, mainly during the rise of the civil rights movement. Many ideas, organizations, and influential figures began appearing during this time period, which include Dr. King, Malcolm X, Black nationalism, the NAACP, the Nation of Islam, and many others. First, let's talk about Black nationalism. What is Black nationalism? Black nationalism is an ideology that promotes Black liberation, self-sufficiency, determination, and Black proudness. The movement was originated by Paul Cuffe and Martin Delany, but later in the 20th century was promoted by Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X. The movement's mission was to promote African Americans to be separate from white society in order to achieve racial empowerment. However, Malcolm X claimed he didn't believe in a segregated society, even though Elijah Muhammad and other members of the Nation of Islam thought otherwise. This difference in opinion would eventually lead to the supposed beef between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, also known as the Nation of Islam versus the NAACP. Next, let's discuss the Nation of Islam. At the time, the Nation of Islam was an organization that was ran by Black Muslims, however accepted all races and ethnicities, except white. One key misconception is that Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam were violent. They did promote and advocate retaliation in responding to violent acts of racism and oppression through self-defense. With that being said, initially, they weren't considered just a straight-up violent organization. Now, later on, they would enact violence by eventually killing Malcolm X, altercations with the police, and others. Although the Nation of Islam didn't accept white people into their organization, they did support white middle-class norms advocated by integrationists. This support would involve selecting certain qualities like culinary, dresses, and public decorum. With that being said, this would eventually lead to a rebirth that would require a paradoxical withdrawal from white society. During this time period, Nation of Islam members like Elijah Muhammad would voice his disdain for African Americans who promoted self-hate and bowing down to their white constituents. This will provide us a little bit of context and understanding, because this is how similar Malcolm X felt about Dr. King. Unlike Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam, Dr. King and the NAACP were Christian activists that were known for their nonviolent approach. They believed in integration with white people and promoting humanitarianism. They believed in the simple philosophy of improved life and distinguishing suffering. The NAACP and Dr. King wanted to work alongside whites to build a safe and sound society. This is where he'd introduce whites to join the organization. However, this would really trigger Malcolm X because he would refer Dr. King as an Uncle Tom, Dr. Chicken Wing, claiming that he was the white man's conception of a black man's organization, essentially calling Dr. King a sellout. He would be referring to the white presidents that have come along throughout the history of the NAACP. Names like Arthur and Joel Spingard, K.V. Kaplan, and Henry Moskowitz, all in which are of Jewish descent. However, the violent perception that was painted on the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X was so strong that it actually benefited the NAACP and Martin Luther King, since they were viewed as more humanitarian and less radical.